Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to Orgasmica, the podcast where we talk all about sexuality, sensuality, all things healing and beyond without any taboos or restrictions. And today I have a guest that I already had, but we're doing this over again because she is oh so amazing. We had some technical problems before, and I appreciate so much her bringing her time and giving me her time, giving us her time to have this conversation. Her name is Samara Bay, and she's the author of Permission to Speak and a coach as well, and many other things. A mom, a coach, a celebrity voice coach, like oh, so many amazing things. And I am so grateful to have her in the podcast. Welcome, welcome, Samara.
Thank you, Virginia, and hello, everybody. Also, for those of you for whom Spanish is your first language, the book is available as Permiso para Hablar.
Hablar, permiso para hablar, for you guys that need this book in Spanish, that if you don't speak
En
English.
Amazon.
And Amazon, she says. Yes. I love it. Yes, please go get this book. It is such an amazing book. And I want to talk so many things with you and things that we had started like speaking. But I want to hear first what prompted you to write this book, because this is such a needed book in the world, like when you released it. But I feel like even more so right now. And I feel like people need to hear what is the backstory of how you got to write this book.
The summer of 2018, I was in Washington, D.C. I live in Los Angeles, and I'd left my husband and my child, bless, for a whole month because I got to coach Gal Gadot on Wonder Woman 2. I have this background as a dialect coach.
Amazing.
In Hollywood. And what that has meant, of course, is getting to work with a lot of movie stars on what's happening with their tongues.
Sexy.
But, the reality is it's always deeper and more interesting than that. So many actors and so many humans, whether English is their first language or not, end up having a lot of crap around their voices. And as soon as I show up and offer a safe space to actually unpack that crap, magic happens. I mean, just like the pouring out of old stories, of old memories, of comments that were made by their families or by that boy in second grade or by their first date or by their first boss. And it ends up being like a real healing process to actually just name that stuff and realize it doesn't necessarily belong to you and it doesn't belong to the future that you want to build. So I already knew some version of that, but I got to coach Gal that summer. She's an utter delight, but unrelated to her personality. I was working on Wonder Woman 2, and the stuff that they were filming in Washington, D.C. required a lot of stunt sequences, a lot of flying, a lot of harnessed in these, technical things that were keeping her in the air, and no language, no sounds coming out of her. She wasn't even microphoned. So I had nothing to do on a lot of those days. And that was this moment in the US, summer of 2018, when we were 2 years into our former president's term. And we were, many of us, going to protests and writing postcards and aware that we were heading towards our first midterm, our first chance to possibly change the story in the country. And that was the summer that we started to see the pictures of the kids getting separated. And, my activist friends were burning out. I was just like, I felt so fragile. The cruelty just seemed impossible to process. And in the context of that, I got this call from MoveOn.org, which is one of these lovely organizations that is always on the lookout for candidates for office that need resources, either money or training. And they had a whole bunch of women, what became the blue wave in November, but we didn't know. We didn't know that summer. All we knew was like, wow, a bunch of women are, interesting, getting into politics. Can't imagine why they're inspired to do so.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, because they were new to being seen and heard at scale, needed public speaking coaching. Yeah. And so this phone call was somebody over there who'd gotten my info from a friend who was saying, is that something you would be willing to do for free? Pro bono. Just dive in and coach all these women over Zoom. And I was so honored. And it really struck me as like, I don't know, actually. how good I'm going to be at this, but I know I'm not going to make them worse. Listen,
Yeah, for sure.
listen.
For sure. Definitely there's going to be an improvement of sorts.
Right? I mean, spend some time with me and like something will happen. But I did not realize that what I was signing up for was actually what would end up being a huge life pivot for me. Because I coached those women and I felt like I had a front row seat to exactly the kind of leaders that we want more of in the world. The exact kind of like, you know, life experience and heart to really quote unquote represent us. But every single one of them who were so magnificent had trouble translating that magnificence onto the microphone in front of lots of people. And I realized, this is my superpower, this is my calling, this matters to me a lot. Because, you know, who ends up being in charge in the world?
Yeah.
Sometimes in a certain way comes down to who has just decided that how they sound is just fine.
Yeah.
And
And one of the things that I love that you speak about is how we have had for, you know, I don't know if thousands of years, but I'm just assuming thousands of years of a specific type of leader that we're used to seeing to lead us into whatever it is, right? It's like a specific type of a person, how it sounds, how it stands, how it is, you know. And a lot of the women, and you know, one of the things that we have in common is that we work a lot with women, and a lot of women have a really hard time speaking up, right? And so, which is why I love the title of your book, you know, because it's like the permission and like, because it comes from generations, right, of women that they were not allowed to speak. Actually, in Spanish, there was a saying that people still say till this day, that es calladita te ves más bonita, right? So it's like prettier, like if you shut up, you look prettier.
Yeah.
And these are the stuff that we grew up with, you know, like, oh, no, you actually, if you shut up, you look actually prettier. Like a woman that speaks her mind, it's unattractive. Like a woman that speaks her mind and says the thing is a woman that is too dangerous, to this, to that, too brazen. You just should, you know, specifically like in the Latino culture that I cannot believe, but the word still says, you know, calladita te ves más bonita. It's like, you know, so it comes from generations of women, our ancestors, that were not allowed to speak because they were like, shut the fuck up. You cannot. It will threaten your safety. It will threaten your, you know, before, you know, if you got divorced. Hell, I mean, you couldn't like do anything. You couldn't make money. My grandmother got married when she was 17, you know, my great grandmother when like she was 15 or something like that. Like these women did not have options, right? And so the only thing was to obey, sit down, and a leader looks like this, and it's usually a man, and it's usually, well, in this country, it's usually a white man that is very like specific to what people feel safe with, safe with having a say and having a lead. And so this is changing, but I feel like even when it's changing and we see cultural stuff changing, right? And we see women taking more of a stand. You know, Mexico has its first woman president in that sense. But I just meet so many women, and on the day to day, they have such a hard time really speaking their own truth because they don't understand what that looks like. And they still feel in their bodies that it's a danger. So, what is something that we can do to work on? Like, even if we logically understand, like, oh, no, yes, of course, like, I should speak up. I should say what I think. I should say what I feel. There's still this fear, embodied fear of like, no, 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 I'm going to be in trouble. Like, no, 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 I cannot, I cannot just put a lot of attention on myself because that's dangerous, you know, all those things. What do you feel like that has changed? And also, what can people start doing?
You so get it, and thank you for articulating all of that, because part of why I wanted to write this book, and part of why, frankly, I got this amazing book deal as somebody who was really an unknown person. I didn't have a big platform, but it's that I think I will never really know, but I think it's because I really said the thing, and in this case, by the thing, what I mean is that, yeah, it's a practical how-to, and I'm going to answer your question with some, you know, hopefully tips and tricks that like feel juicy to everybody listening. But it's also a real cultural and spiritual reckoning of the stories we've been handed down both in terms of, as you say, who we have seen in leadership roles and what that traditional sound of power has been that we, of course, don't see because it's not visual, but we have learned, we have integrated as what must be right. And so we might be a deviation from right. And the other part of it is what you said about our cultural, but also personal trauma or ancestral stories that live in us. Speaking up is dangerous, is an ancestral story for many of us, and not just women, but for many of us, and especially women, because look, as I write about in my first chapter, because I was like, we just got to get into this. 100 years ago, maybe 120 years ago, in New York City, white women, rich white women, so we can fill in the blanks for people who don't fit that description, were not allowed out of their house unattended. They had to have a dude with them. They were not allowed into bars. They were not allowed into what we might call, quote unquote, the public. So when we talk about public speaking, it's not just keep your voice low and sound like a man. That is already crappy advice. But it's also, your nerves are getting in your way. Just take deep breaths. No, your nerves are the stigma lingering in your body of what you learned from your mother, who learned it from her mother, who was around 120 years ago, or maybe her mother was. And we are actually the first generation for many, many of us, right? Some of us have mothers who worked outside of the house and have their own traumas, right? But for many of us, we are the first generation that is sort of told, no, there's no problems anymore. And so we're being hard on ourselves. And as much as we can, as you say, intellectually say, no, the problem is someone else, we often turn it on ourselves anyway, in the moment, when the stakes are high, when the eyes are on us, and when we have to talk about something that matters to us. So let me actually transition that into answering, the sort of practicals. I think of a 4-part warm-up as something that all of us can do. It's free, but we don't, because we're like, oh my God, I don't have 2 minutes, or I'm going to feel silly.
I think having a practice is just so people are like, I don't have time. I'm like, look at your social media and tell me how much you spend in there. And then you tell me later if you don't have time.
Well, and also I'm just going to step into coach mode for a second and say you don't have time because you're giving all your power away in all of these ways that seem very socially acceptable, right? Of course you don't have time because you're helping everyone else. And so through that lens, a tiny, tiny bit of self-care, by which I mean a 2-minute, maybe even 1 minute warm up before you speak, before you go on a microphone for any reason, before you speak in a big room, before you do a Zoom, is not just a kind thing to do for yourself. It's a radical act. It changes the story. It makes you the hero of your own life. Just a minute or two to prepare yourself. So what do you do in that minute or two? Okay, I have four things that I like to suggest.
Amazing.
And these are always sort of growing and changing. And I hope that it's clear to anybody listening that this is a creative art. It is not a science. So please fill in for yourself what works in your body, having listened to Virginia as long as you have, and knowing that your body matters.
Yes.
And shall we just name that centering your own delight, your own mischief, your own pleasure is an important part of that, even if we're talking about quote unquote public speaking. And in fact, I think part of why Virginia and I are talking is because there is an overlap here. When we center how our body feels, we change the world.
Amen.
So 4 steps. First one is, and I'm really thinking let's imagine you're about to go onto a stage and speak about something for a few minutes and you're feeling all the body nerves. And you could accidentally slide into oh God, I'm not prepared enough. Why didn't I do this? What am I going to do? What am I going to mess up, right? How is this going to go badly? So find a spot off stage or in your own house if you're doing this on Zoom where you're hopefully not being seen by anybody. So you have a little bit of true privacy. And here's your 4 steps. Step 1, notice what stories are going through your head and just have a little bit of have a massive amount of generosity towards yourself. Oh, that story is from my ancestors. That story is from my childhood. That story, I'm gonna fuck this up. Do I need that story? Is that helping me? So step 1 of a warm up is just notice. Separate those mean thoughts going through your head from you, your soul, and just notice them and go, thank you for trying to keep me safe. ego, let's call it our ego, right? Thank you for trying to keep me safe. I'm on to something bigger.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing something else here. You can hang out, but I'm going to quiet you down a little bit, and I'm not going to take you seriously. I'm not going to take those voices seriously because we're changing the story. So that's thing number one. It's just a little psychological check-in on what stories are lingering in your head that are just not only not helping you have a good time, but are actually getting in the way of you connecting with your audience and giving them the thing that you know you really have, the value that you actually have to help them. So that's one. Two, we get real practical. Move your body. Move your body. So translate this into what feels good for you. Right? From me, I always do a little yoga, and it's not like a, full half-hour yoga session. You don't even have to get sweaty.
Yeah, you can stretch, you can shake, you can, there's
shake,
so
you
many
go upside
ways.
down, or just bend over so your head is below your waist. I like to remind people going left and right and loosening up your spine, right? Our spines hold so much tension, and as soon as we start to loosen them up, we're like, wait, I have some body wisdom in there. Oh, wait, my wisdom, it lives in there. Shall I tap into it for this thing I'm about to do or not? Right? And as you said, shake it out, dance, a little shimmy, put on music if you have 30 seconds and you want to just, do an entrance song for yourself. Move your body, get a little bit of breath going. So thing number three, notice that breath. You don't have to necessarily interfere, but notice that breath and connect it to a little bit of sound and a little bit of mouth movement. So this is where it really helps to be alone, because you will feel silly. And frankly,
that's the whole point.
Getting okay with feeling silly is an important part of learning how to show the F up.
100%.
So as you start to notice your breath, maybe from a little bit lower down, right? Especially when we do something in aerobic, right? They used to say 100 years ago, do jumping jacks. That's not terrible. Do some jumping jacks, whatever. But get your breath going. And then you're noticing, okay, I'm a little tiny bit out of breath. And then go, little hum. Maybe a little higher than your natural pitch. Then go down. And then maybe you trill out your lips. If that's hard, it's because you need to warm them up a little bit more. So you open wide. Oh, look how big I can actually get with my mouth. Oh my gosh, human bodies are so wild. Tongues. Our tongue actually connects down to behind our jaw. It's like a really big muscle. And often we hold it really tight. So how do you, stretch it out a little bit? These are called our articulators. Our teeth, our jaw, it's all the things that move to make shapes in our mouth, that make sounds, that make meaning.
Now,
yeah.
Of course, this is amazing freaking advice for people that are about to go on stage. But I feel like this also could be for people that are about to have hard conversations, right? You're going to have
dare you to set yourself up
with a friend. Yeah. You're going to have a conversation with your partner, and you're going to have hard conversations, and you don't know, like, do I say it like this? Do I say it like that? What is my authentic way of saying like this instead of getting a script? A lot of us want to have a script, right? It's like, tell me, how do I say it to my partner? I'm like, well, you're the best person that knows your partner, so you will know. But how would you say in the most compassionate, embodied way? These you can do too before you have like a hard, intense conversation about something that makes you uncomfortable.
I often find before I'm going to speak, like half an hour before, I will often have some version of a thought of, oh my God, this is impossible. How am I possibly going to do this? And as soon as I do a warm up, those thoughts go away. And so I offer this, as you say, for the private conversations as well, because the impossibleness actually begins to dissipate. It kind of slides away when we invite our body and its wisdom into the room with us.
And I love that you said that.
I don't know how to say
said the body has the wisdom, and you said, let's tap into the wisdom that my body has. We have so much wisdom in there, not only ours, right? So we just talked about the bad things that we can inherit from ancestor, but also there's some wisdom in our ancestors that we also carry. And we have a lot of answers within our body and within our own intuition. And it's stored in there. So you were like, let's tap into that wisdom in our body. It is just so right on and spot on. And I love that.
Well, and if we haven't done a warm up, then in another way, other language for that, what we're doing is bringing our most socialized, normative, stuck, trapped, not breathing deeply version of ourselves into a conversation that we hope will change deep things for us.
Oh my God. Yes.
So
Yes.
let
Thank.
me finish though, because there's 4, and I don't want
Oh
people
my
to be
God.
like,
Did
"What
I
was the
cut you
4th?"
off on the third one? I'm so sorry. Keep
No, it's
going.
okay because it's getting juicy, and I really appreciate that you said that. But so it's the, there's like the number 1 is the changing the story. Number 2
Mhm.
is the body. Number 3 is breath connecting to voice and the articulators. And by voice, I do mean like the hum or just a little sound. It's nice to just not go from silent to suddenly being on.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let your own voice be foreign to you. And the final one is take a second, and if you have no time at all, skip all the rest and just do this. Put a hand on your heart, or close your eyes, or plant your feet, or something that feels grounding, and bring to mind, and you can do this in advance so that you've got a few, bring to mind a moment, an occasion, when someone you admire said something really lovely to you. That just made you feel seen. And if, as I say this, your first thought is that your brain goes blank and you're like, there's never been one, that just honor that that's some, patriarchal bullshit that just entered into you, but keep going. Because
Yes.
there's going to be more that are going to start to arrive. And it can be a memory of an email you got. It can be a hug. It can be someone looking straight into your eyes. But any moment where you really felt a sense of personal power. So not power over, but power to, agency. Badassery.
Mm-hmm. It
A
feels like
moment when someone gave you a hug and said, fuck, what you said was so useful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And bring that memory to mind and breathe it in with your whole body so that you let yourself feel it again and invite that badass version of you into the next room. Psychologists call this priming for power. The idea is that the thoughts that we have, especially the full body ones, in the moments before anything, prime us. They set us up. So if we don't do that, if we're not intentional with our thoughts, of course we will inevitably think worst case scenario, fear. And so we know the opposite of fear is love. It's on us to take a second and bring a love thought, a power thought, however you want to think about it, a mischief thought, a pleasure thought, into your body so that you invite that version of you out. You're different. You're different when you have that thought than when you don't.
Oh my God, yeah. And I love that because there is a lot of also stigma for women, and I wanna talk to you about 2 things, which is something that you said, which is like the worst advice that we could have gotten is act like a man, right? In moments of power. I feel, and I talked recently about this, that when women we enter the workforce and when we enter positions of leadership in the world, we came in, guns blazing, be like the only way to enter the spaces is to act like a man and to be in our masculine and just to be in our head and hustle, hustle, hustle and penetrate, 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 which is what the masculine energy is. It's just like constantly penetrating, constantly penetrating. And I think we are at a point, which is what we needed to do in order to get in. So I don't have there's no criticism in here about the way we had to enter the space. We did it, but we're not completely there yet, but we are in certain ways. Now I feel like I've seen so many women now get burned out. And because our bodies and our way of speaking and our way of dressing and our way of being, we pushed the feminine away and in a sense demonized it to be weak and subservient and other things when instead the feminine is actually really quite powerful. But the feminine knows how to rest. The feminine knows how to receive, even receive a compliment. Because I know a lot of women cannot even receive a freaking compliment, and it drives me crazy. I call it the ping pong compliment. When a woman gives you a compliment and you have to like send it right back immediately because you feel so uncomfortable in your skin that you cannot even receive a compliment. You cannot receive somebody buying you lunch. You're like, no, 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 no. Of course not. I got it. I got it. It's like all these ways that we don't know how to receive. So how do we, in positions of power, where we have been taught, like, you have to dress like this with the blazer and the things, and like, and talk like a man, and be assertive, and like, be almost like rude in a sense, and like the assertiveness comes out of a place of, I'm gonna fuck you over, if like all these things that we have seen. How do we change the narrative, and how do we approach these spaces of people that have places in power where we can come into our feminine and speak in a softer way. Even the company that I have with Marta, which is a friend that introduced us, and Valeria, a lot of the things, one of them said, I think it was Valeria that said, like, a man would have never said it like that. And I was like, them right, because we're women and we're not treating other people like men would of. I want to have conversations and not just disqualify people and be like, fuck you, move away. That is not how I want to do things. So how do we approach this feminine into positions of power and be okay? And also follow people and women and actually have that connection with our voice and our speech and our dress and our everything that is more leaning towards that.
Juicy question. Okay, I have two thoughts. One of them is one of my favorite quotes that just feels so right. I have to bring it into this space. Mm-hmm. Toni Morrison, incredible novelist, wrote, as you enter positions of trust and power, so as you start to notice, right, that perhaps you've gained just enough privilege or platform or whatever position that you can spend it, as you enter positions of trust and power, dream a little before I think there's like an obvious kind of interpretation here of, we're all about getting the seat at the table. But the question is then when we get at that table, too often we look left and we look right and we're like, okay, what are the rules of the table? Mm-hmm. Instead of being like, well, I'm at the table now. What do I think the table is? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But the secret key to unlock the answer that you might have inside of you to that question, I think, is Toni Morrison's suggestion of dreaming. That there is actually something to be said for gathering our allies, gathering our friends, mm-hmm. right? Part of the point of my book is that you feel like you're super not alone, right? Mm-hmm. This is a collective action.
Yes, it is.
And then there's also this dreaming part of it that comes from, okay, once I have the collective behind me and I know I have this sort of freedom to dream, like I have the permission to dream about a better world, well, what do I actually think leadership should sound like? Mm-hmm. Who do I love? Mm-hmm. in the public sphere or in private? Who do I love how they show up? Mm-hmm. I love this TED Talk. I love this podcast series. I love this woman who every time she shows up in public, she just seems like she's brought herself in and she's got mischief. And look for those people because the answer will be different for each of us.
And she's open, or she's, I love women that are emotional. I love humans that are emotional. My husband is very emotional. And when a woman gets emotional in a conversation with me and goes, I'm so sorry. I'm like, stop apologizing for your feelings. Yeah. You're a human being. And when I see speakers and I see people in positions of power and they get emotional, I feel a draw in towards them, not a like, oh my God, how can you get emotional?
Well, and especially if they get emotional and then they don't apologize for it, as you say.
They don't apologize for it. They use it to express more because we're human beings. This thing that we have to be robots like, in positions of power and not have feelings, it is so detrimental to the collective and the community and like the world because you're not allowed to be a human being when in reality we are human beings.
And Virginia, not only that, animals.
Yeah.
We're animals, and just like our pets that we love, and we love them for their honesty, for the fact that they would never lie to us, they don't know how to.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what an emotional hit is. It's just the honest moment. And then to cover it for all kinds of completely understandable socialized reasons, right? To cover it is a great example of something that we've been socialized into that is we maybe have outgrown. So in this dream state, the example you gave is brilliant. And then we can begin to collect more. And I love the idea that each of us collects for ourselves people, like a list of folks who are what we would consider the new sound of power. If the old sound leaves us feeling kind of cold and empty and like we're chasing some standard that we will never, ever, ever, ever reach, then the new sound of power is inevitably varied. All kinds of different ways of showing up. But wow, I tend to be attracted to, I tend to lean in, I tend to want to share on social media when people XYZ and start to notice for yourself, right? Like this is where the science can come in. We can have some data points. I love Esther Perel. I love how Esther Perel, who is a sex therapist
Mm-hmm.
shows up talking about subjects that are not always common and found in business contexts.
Mm-hmm.
And she shows up unapologetically with her English as a second language, maybe third language
Yeah.
accent, and does so with delight.
Oh, yes.
And allows herself to get to the end of her thought and surprise herself with it, because she is so willing to be present and think in the moment and bring
Yeah.
her expertise laced with wonder. I mean,
Yes. And I love
collecting
also,
folks
like
like that.
women that I follow and I love that are women that make mistakes and just be like, yeah, sorry, like that's, my podcast is very unedited, and the reason why it's because I just really wanted, I make up words, I make mistakes, and I want to show up like that. You know what I mean? I don't want something super polished and super like perfect. Like this is not who I am. And it's not me. I make mistakes. I have horrible grammar in both languages that I speak. It's like it's just who I am. And I still have a voice and have a say on certain things. I want to ask you one last question. Well, two last questions, but the first one is like, why do you think that we have been have such a hard time speaking about sex and like the taboo of pleasure and sex, and yet it is the thing that it's in most people's world, sex, money, and power, we will say. And we have people that speak a lot about money. And then, and also, I just also feel like there's a connection between sex and money when there's certain taboos speaking about. But I feel like women, even speaking about what they need, what they want, about their bodies, about saying even about a vagina, like even saying the words, we stopped ourselves. And what do you think that is?
I mean, I think we both know there's just such cultural stories. There's religious stories, there's patriarchal stories.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that we have trouble saying what we want in the bedroom is so connected to the fact that we also have trouble saying what we want just talking to girlfriends who are
Right.
like,
Right.
what do you think your next chapter is going to be? I don't know. How would I even find it in my body, the answer to that question? I'm so cut off from it.
Right.
And that's the reality for so many of us. And maybe men share that. I don't know. I don't want to say that, men have it so much easier, because
No, I
patriarchy
think
hurts
they
everybody.
share in a different way, but I don't think necessarily. I think what men have a hardest time in sharing feelings, right?
Yeah.
Their heart, like in Tantra, they said that women, we got cut off, patriarchally from our vaginas, and men from their hearts. And it doesn't benefit, neither of us benefits, neither of us.
Well, so actually, for the answer to the last question, I said I had two things. I had forgotten the second one, and we moved on. But actually, this reminded me of it, so I think I'm going to offer it now, also in answer to your question. Which, of
Mhm.
course, we can all sit with the answer. We all know it's so interconnected with these ideas of stigma and what's socially acceptable.
Lizzie, hold on a second. Lily. Yeah, there you go. Sorry.
But the other thing is that, you've talked about the masculine and the feminine energies, and sometimes it's nice, I think, to take it out of the realm of that binary and into the realm of something that I talk about in the book that kind of maps beautifully to that, but in a messier, like, I don't know, sparklier way,
Yeah.
which is strength and warmth.
Mm.
So these are not opposites. They're
Yeah.
really two different energies.
Yeah.
And all of us have some combination of both.
Mm-hmm.
So our warmth is how, obviously, like whatever quote unquote warm we seem, but really is about love. It's about care. It's about how much we are caring for the other people in the space and actively making it clear.
Mm-hmm.
And strength is about self-trust and how much we believe that what we're talking about matters.
Mm-hmm.
And all of us have strength and warmth that live inside of
Yeah.
us. I am not judging
And
anybody
you
for
can
that,
it
but
actually
how
we
we
can
are
say this as a
perceived.
masculine and feminine. Like that is pretty
Well,
much
that's why I
like
say
almost.
exactly. But how we are perceived, how people seem to receive us, is often a bit lopsided. And so, if you're listening, you probably know, do people tend to, say that you're aggressive, or that you're a quote unquote bitch, or that, why do you have to get so angry all the time? Or have people always told you your whole life some version of like, you're just so soft spoken? Or,
Yeah.
oh my God, she's so sweet.
Yeah.
And so, this sort of quadrant, I guess, emerges of our strength and our warmth and what blend we do. But the reason I bring all of this up is sometimes it's a nice way to unlock for ourselves why we're getting in our own way in terms of our strength or our warmth. Sometimes the strength side, particularly, because obviously that codes a bit to masculine. If we have, many of us, all of us, have accidentally linked in our mind the concept of strength or competence with not just a masculine energy, but with the sort of worst versions of masculine energy, violent, arrogant, we're not going to want to come across that.
Right.
So actually, there is an opportunity to shake up the archetype for yourself.
For sure.
What is another kind of strength that you
Yes.
love?
Yes. And there's always like in Tantra, they say there's the toxic masculine and then this sacred masculine and then the toxic feminine and then there's the sacred feminine. And we just have to understand where is that we are standing in with those and then speak from that place. I know we ran out of time. I want to quickly ask you one last question, which is what is an orgasmic life to you?
Oh my God. My first impulse is it's one that feels like it's in alignment, where what you want, what you enjoy, and what you say you want.
I love that. Yeah. Please let everybody know where they can find your book, where they can find you, where they can follow you, all your things. Please follow this wonderful day. It's amazing. Go buy her book. Where can they find you on Instagram, on social media? Tell us all the things.
Go to @Samara Bay on Instagram. Follow me. Send me a DM if anything in this inspired you. I enjoy having a little chat. Definitely get the book. And I have a weekly Substack. So if you want more than just the book, and if you want my article on the erotic in public speaking, which I think is what got Virginia and me thinking about having this chat, it's called How to Show Up. And Substack is just a new bloggy blog.
I know. I'm on Substack now. Did I tell you?
Oh, I love that. I feel like it's like accidentally gets in the way when people are like, I'm not on Substack. You don't need to be on Substack.
No, you can read. You can just read everything that is happening. Yeah. So I love that. Just go follow her, go contact her. And I hope that you and I can do something together, like a workshop together or something, because I would love for people to get these body stuff with the voice stuff. And it is just so imperative. And thank you for all the work that you're doing in the world. It is just so important. Thank you for being here. And I will see you I will see you next week with another episode. I will put all of her things on the show notes, so go and check those out.